When I finally conquered his heart, I told myself I would stay for Ethan Sullivan. After 10 years of missions, heartbreak, and endless trials, I had earned the right to remain by his side. Yet the very moment I whispered that choice to the system, a cascade of comments flashed before my eyes, like cruel neon signs across a dark highway. The heroine chooses to stay for the male lead, but he is busy preparing a wedding for his dying first love. What a jerk. The words seared deeper than any blade. I rushed forward, trying to stop the scene unraveling before me. Ethan looked at me with eyes filled not with guilt or tenderness, but with disappointment, as though I had failed some invisible test. "Sabrina is dying, Madeline," he said with solemn gravity. "And you still think about love right now?" My world collapsed as I watched him slip a ring onto Sabrina Cruz's frail finger, with a gentleness that had once been mine alone. My chest felt like it cracked open, but I forced myself to walk away. In my place, I left behind a puppet, a white chrysanthemum of a woman expressionless and cold, perfectly molded to bless his charade. At the hospital, when Sabrina lay between machines and monitors, Ethan asked me to cook soup for her. That lifeless puppet sat beside him, smiling faintly as he tasted it, as if she were born to serve this role. Later, when Sabrina flew overseas for surgery, Ethan accompanied her, and the puppet sent them off with well wishes, her voice smooth and untroubled. "Bon voyage," she said, while the comments burst across my vision once again. Why doesn't the male lead smile? Maybe he doesn't really like a heroine who is so cold and detached. Maybe he prefers a woman who feels nothing. Ethan's only dreams of me now were distorted visions. He saw me selling my body to save my mother's life, saw me dragged into ruin until a proud young man saved me from the gutter. He woke raging with jealousy, furious at an illusion, cursing the green tea bastard who had dared to steal me away. When he confronted me trembling with rage, I answered with chilling indifference. "His mother is dying, Ethan, and you still think of romance." The comments roared in delight. They lived for this theater, streaming now on City with me. They teased making my agony into entertainment. I had been here for 10 years. 10 years of sacrifice, 10 years of fighting to earn my happy ending, and finally I had conquered the male lead. When the system asked if I wanted to stay or leave, I said stay without hesitation. In the real world, I had been the eldest daughter in a family where no one loved me. Here, at least someone once had. Here, I believed I had built something real, but the comments never stopped. Poor heroine. She gave up the chance to return to her real world for him, yet he is busy preparing a wedding for his dying first love. Their pity was more suffocating than scorn. Another chimed in. "How sad. The first love just wants to be a bride, once before she dies. Isn't that reasonable?" The answer burned across the screen. "Reasonable my ass. Cut it out right now." I froze. I had faced death, endured voids, and completed impossible missions. Nothing should surprise me anymore. Yet the weight of these words lodged like thorns in my chest. Ethan, my Ethan, could he really betray me? I told myself no. 10 years should count for something. I believed in us. Still, when the words rose in my throat, they caught like stones. Instead, I whispered to the system, "Can I have more time to decide?" The system hesitated, then relented. "Fine, I will give you 1 week. After all, we've been through this together." Its voice dripped with detached amusement. I called Ethan, my voice steady, though my pulse raced. "Where are you?" His tone was calm, gentle, almost affectionate. "Why do you ask all of a sudden?" "Of course I'm at the office." I looked at the streaming comments that screamed otherwise. "Don't believe him. He's at Scottsdale Fashion Square with his first love choosing wedding rings." I swallowed the rising tide inside me and smiled into the phone. "I see. Don't work too hard. Remember to rest." The moment we hung up, I drove straight to the mall, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. All I could do was pray. Pray it was all a misunderstanding. If I saw nothing, if he was truly at the office, I would not hesitate to choose him again. I would stay, build a life with him, carve out a fairy tale ending. But reality is rarely merciful. Through the crystal windows of a jewelry store, I saw Ethan and Sabrina side by side, heads bent together, fingers brushing as they examined glittering rings. Sabrina Cruz, his first love, the one who had once abandoned him. My chest tightened with an ache too sharp to breathe. I remembered the day I first arrived in this world, just a high school girl given the mission to conquer the male lead and guide him through his darkest hours. Conquering him never meant it had to be love. At first, I chose friendship. For 3 years, our relationship floated in limbo, never crossing that fragile line. Then in college, Ethan met Sabrina. I still remember the day she glanced at me, then asked him directly, "Are you and Madeline together?" Without a flicker of hesitation, he shook his head. "No, we're just friends. Friends." If that was all, then I had no right to hope. I buried my feelings deep, burned the roots before they could sprout, and told myself it was enough to stand beside him, to be a friend, to watch silently as they grew closer. But I remembered every smile, every small act of kindness, every promise he had once given me. And now as I stared through the glass at him, slipping rings over Sabrina's slender hand, I felt all 10 years crumble into ash. "No, we're just friends." That was what Ethan Sullivan told her in college, when Sabrina Cruz had turned to him with a curious smile and asked about us. Friends. The word was a blade that cut clean and merciless. If we were only friends, then I had no right to dream of more. I smothered every flicker of hope that tried to rise inside me, burying my feelings deep, promising myself I would keep the distance of a friend. So I watched in silence as they grew closer, my heart burning quietly, while my lips stayed sealed. By junior year, his family's empire crumbled. The mighty Sullivan Enterprises teetered on the brink of bankruptcy, and Sabrina vanished the moment the storm hit, breaking up with him, without a second thought, leaving for another man and a new life overseas. Blow after blow left Ethan hollow and drowning in liquor. Night after night, I stood outside bars in Scottsdale, waiting for him to stumble out reeking of whiskey, my arms ready to drag him back to safety. I never complained. I never asked for thanks. When he sobered, he would look at me with confused eyes, almost desperate. "Madeline, why are you so good to me?" I always gave the same small smile. "Because we're friends." I was with him in the darkest days, walking side by side as he rebuilt from ashes. Together, we pieced Sullivan Enterprises back into something stronger. Slowly, without realizing it, our friendship shifted, became something else, something heavier and more dangerous. By the time my mission meter showed 80%, he finally confessed what had been growing between us. Yet even then I hesitated. I remembered Sabrina walking away so easily, how destroyed he had been. Could he truly love again? Could I trust a heart that had once been shattered, but time wore down my doubts? He gave me everything he had once given her, and more. He said the words I had waited years to hear. "The woman I love now is you." At last I believed him. At last I allowed myself to trust. I had conquered the male lead. I could have chosen to stay by his side forever. That should have been the end of my story. But just as I reached for happiness, Sabrina Cruz returned. My hand trembled as I tapped lightly against the glass window of the jewelry store. Both Ethan and Sabrina turned in shock. The color drained from his face. His whole body went rigid like a man caught in a crime. I stepped inside and bent to pick up the diamond ring he had just dropped. It was enormous, dazzling under the light, sharp enough to make the corners of my eyes sting. My voice was calm, too calm. "Didn't you say you were at the office, Ethan?" I tightened my fist around the ring, the edges biting into my skin. Before he could find words, Sabrina spoke first, her tone sweetly apologetic. "Madeline, please don't blame Ethan. He's only helping me with something small." I didn't even glance at her. My eyes stayed locked on his, cold and cutting. "Is this ring for her? You were buying it to give to her, weren't you? And what about me?" My voice was soft, but each word was a blade. His lips parted, searching for an explanation, but all that came out was a faltering whisper. "It's just a performance. I'm not really marrying her." The absurdity of it snapped something inside me. What woman on earth would accept this excuse? Did he think life was a stage that we were actors in some tragic play? My breath shook as I forced the words out. I will not allow this. Suddenly, Sabrina dropped to her knees before me, tears sliding down her pale cheeks. Please, Madeline, I'm in the final stage of cancer. I won't live much longer. My only wish is to be Ethan's bride just once before I die. Please let me have this, Nina. Ethan's face twisted with anguish as he hurried to pull her to her feet, cradling her in his arms. His eyes, when they met mine, burned with disappointment. How can you be this cruel? Do you take joy in tormenting a dying woman? And with that, he guided her out, leaving me alone in the glittering store. I laughed under my breath, a bitter, broken sound, but my body shook with fury. I could not accept this. Days passed. Ethan never came home. When I called, his voice was weary, frayed at the edges. Maddie, I'm on a business trip. Let's talk when I get back. My tone was ice. We can talk about anything, Ethan, except about you and Sabrina. There was silence, then a long sigh. All right, I understand. His next words nearly made my guard collapse. Madeline, the one I love now is you. For a heartbeat, I almost believed him again. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust that he would let go of this charade. Relief brushed against me, warm and dangerous. But then the comments lit up across my vision, stabbing like glass shards. The heroine is so pitiful. She doesn't even know today is the day he proposes to his first love. This man says one thing, but means another. My breath caught. The ground tilted beneath me. The story was spinning out of my control, dragging me toward an ending I could no longer deny. They said it was only a fake wedding, a harmless act to grant a dying woman's final wish. If it was just pretend, then why the proposal? Why invite all of his closest friends as witnesses? What kind of life was I supposed to have after this spectacle? The comments burned across my vision, mocking me, and when I read them, I knew the warmth in my chest had turned to ice again. Without hesitation, I drove straight to Rosewood Estate, where the proposal was taking place. The scene that greeted me was a blade to the heart. Under the golden light of an Arizona sunset, amidst rows of red roses glowing like fire, Ethan Sullivan dropped to one knee before Sabrina Cruz. He held out a glittering ring with both hands, his voice tender and filled with sincerity. Sabrina, will you marry me? Let me give you whatever time you have left and make you the happiest bride in the world. The roses framed the moment, and for an instant her pale face seemed to bloom with color. Around them stood Ethan's closest friends, people I had known for years, yet in that moment, they felt like strangers who had turned their backs on me. Sabrina wore a white dress so pure, it looked untouched by sorrow, her hand covering her trembling mouth as tears sparkled in her eyes. She whispered, "Yes, I will." Her fingers extended toward him, waiting for the ring that should have been mine. I couldn't watch another second. I strode forward, knocking the ring from his hands. It skittered across the stones as my voice cracked with fury. Ethan, do you know what you're doing? When our love was at its strongest, you promised me you'd propose in the most beautiful place in the world, that you'd make me the happiest bride alive. And now when I finally stand in that place, you're kneeling to someone else. My chest rose and fell with rage, my vision blurred with tears, my heart pounding like it might break through my ribs. His friends restrained me, pulling me back so I could only face him across a tense silence. Again, his eyes held that same disappointment that had haunted me for weeks. Sabrina is dying, Madeline, and all you can think about is your pride, your jealousy, your romance. I never thought you would become this kind of person. A laugh tore from my throat, sharp and cold as ice. She's dying. What does that have to do with you, Ethan? What does it have to do with me? Have you forgotten how easily she abandoned you back then? Running off with another man without a second thought. His face went rigid, his lips pressed thin. That's in the past. It doesn't matter anymore. Whatever happened, she's still my friend, and I'm only helping her fulfill her last wish. Friend. That was the word he chose. As if it could justify everything, as if it excused the betrayal searing through my chest. In that moment, every illusion I had clung to about us shattered completely. My heart fell into a pit so deep I could no longer see the bottom. That night he came home, holding a bouquet of roses. His head bowed, his voice soft with apology. I've been foolish these past few days. When I heard how sick she was, I couldn't bear to turn her down. But I forgot your feelings, Madeline. That was my mistake. From now on, it won't be like this again. The one who matters most to me has always been you. His words caught me off guard, almost swaying me, almost convincing me to believe in him again. Tomorrow was the deadline the system had given me. Everything that had happened made me question whether staying was still worth it. 10 years of memories, 10 years of devotion, how could I let go so easily? In the end, I accepted the flowers and placed them in a vase. Before bed, he handed me a glass of warm milk. I drank it slowly, letting the warmth settle in my stomach. But soon, a crushing drowsiness overtook me. Ethan sat beside my bed, stroking my hair as if I were a child. His voice was low, almost soothing. "Sleep now, Maddie. When you wake, everything will be better." The comments flared bright, frantic, merciless. "The male lead is cruel." He slipped sleeping pills into her drink. "He's afraid she'll ruin the wedding tomorrow." I understood everything then. A single tear slid down my cheek, cold and heavy, and no one reached to wipe it away. My consciousness slipped into darkness. My body surrendered, and when I opened my eyes again, it was already afternoon. I had missed the ceremony, but not the outcome. Because Sabrina sent me a video. The wedding unfolded on my phone exactly as I had once dreamed for myself. The roses, the vows, the laughter of friends, the perfect smile on Ethan's face. All the details I had shared with him about my dream wedding he had given to her instead. In the video, it was Sabrina who stood beside him in a shining gown. Sabrina who held his hand. As guests cheered Sabrina, who wore the ring that had once been promised to me. And I, the woman who had given 10 years of her life, could only watch from the outside as a tear slipped down and disappeared into the hollow of my chest. Sabrina Cruz sent me a video from her wedding. Every frame was identical to the dream I had once painted for Ethan Sullivan. The roses, the vows, the details I had whispered in moments of trust. All of it had been given to her instead. The bride in white was not me. She stood where I should have stood while I watched through a glowing screen. A laugh escaped my lips, bitter and hollow. I placed the phone down and summoned the system. "Take me away." System 01 materialized, its voice sharp with anger. "You should have left that scumbag long ago. Stay here and you'll get nothing but betrayal. Leave and you'll walk away with $2 million in your pocket." I didn't argue. I didn't care who would replace me. The system promised to insert a puppet in my place, the white Chrysanthemum, a woman cold and detached, incapable of feeling. That was enough. The instant my presence faded, the bedroom door opened. Ethan walked in, dressed down after the wedding, wearing casual clothes, as though nothing had happened. He leaned over the girl in bed, brushing his lips across her forehead. Still sleeping, lazy bones. Her lashes fluttered, then her eyes opened, revealing a distant, polite smile. "Good morning," the comment stream exploded. What just happened? Why did everything glitch? Did the heroine vanish? The system must be crashing. Too many people watching at once. Then relief, almost gleeful. "It's fine. Now we can watch this bastard continue his act from the perspective of Puppet 002. She blinked and asked faintly, "How long was I asleep?" His expression softened. "Not long, just 12 hours. You've been exhausted thinking too much lately." She nodded, pretending to believe him, and he exhaled with quiet relief. "Don't worry, Maddie. I already refused Sabrina's proposal. You're right, I'm your boyfriend. Marrying someone else is absurd. Do I believe him? Of course. But for me, the truth doesn't matter. His lies no longer hold weight." The phone buzzed. A call lit up the screen. His face stiffened, but when he saw the name, his expression melted into tenderness. He answered quickly, his tone sweet. "Sabrina, what's wrong?" On the other end came panic. "Ethan, it's bad." Sabrina collapsed. His body froze, panic flashing in his eyes. How the voice rushed on. After the wedding, she coughed blood and fainted. We brought her to St. Mary's Hospital. The doctors say it doesn't look good. She didn't want you to know, but I think the person she wants to see most right now is you. That single sentence was enough to drain the color from his face. His gaze flicked to me, guilt flashing for a heartbeat before worry consumed him. Ending the call, he rushed to speak first, eager to control the narrative. Sabrina didn't want you upset. She insisted I hide it from you. Even after the ceremony, she told me to come back to you. She never meant to ruin what we have. If you don't believe me, come with me. See her with your own eyes. He didn't wait for my answer, just took my hand and dragged me out. The hospital was crowded, white walls pressing in from every side. On the bed lay Sabrina, fragile as if a breeze might scatter her away. When she saw us, she covered her face in shame. I don't want you to see me like this, Ethan. Please go. He released me without hesitation, went to her side, gently lowering her hands. His gaze was filled with adoration. You're not ugly. You're the most beautiful girl in the world. Her eyes glistened red. Her voice shook. I know I'm selfish, but before I die, I just want to look at you a little longer. Is that so wrong? If it is, maybe heaven will forgive me. Then she turned to me, tears trembling like glass in her eyes, pleading for sympathy. Again, I was thrust into the role of judge, as if I had the power to grant or deny her last wish. Who could harden their heart against someone on the edge of death? One of Ethan's friends, Lucas Millers, spoke up, his voice sharp with reproach. Ethan, we all know Sabrina only left back then because she discovered her illness. She didn't want to drag you down. How can you treat her so coldly now? Ethan's eyes darkened, as if the words struck something raw inside him. He didn't answer immediately, just looked down at Sabrina with that tender devotion that once belonged to me. The comments raged across my vision, merciless. She's acting. She only found out a few months ago. She's back because she has no money for treatment. And yet he still falls for it. I smiled faintly, not exposing the truth, not fighting. Instead, I spoke softly, my tone gentle enough to fool them all. You two are good friends. I understand. Then I looked at Ethan, my words drifting like a breeze. Ethan, take good care of her. She's so unfortunate. The purity of my apparent forgiveness dazzled the room, wrapping me in a glow of saintliness. Even Sabrina looked startled, her tears pausing mid-fall, her expression flickering with something too complex to name. She stared at me as though I had become untouchable. Her own role as the pitiful victim slipping. Inside, I felt nothing, just the hollow ache of a story that had already decided its ending. Ethan, we all know Sabrina only left because she discovered her illness. She didn't want to drag you down. How can you treat her this way? One of his friends spoke with righteous fury. Ethan's eyes lowered, his voice quiet, almost defensive. I know, the comments erupted across my vision like sparks from a fire. The first love really knows how to put on a show. She only found out a few months ago, and when the bills piled up, she came crawling back. And he still falls for it. I read them without a flicker of emotion. I didn't bother to expose her. Instead, I let a gentle smile soften my face as I stepped closer to the hospital bed. You two are such good friends. I understand. Then I turned to Ethan, my voice as light as the desert wind. Take good care of her, Ethan. She's so unfortunate. The room shifted. My words spread like a halo of purity, draping the entire ward in false light. Sabrina's wide eyes glistened. Her tears caught halfway. Her expression twisted between shame and confusion. She had wanted to play the tragic heroine, but I had stolen the role by embracing her instead of fighting her. Her eyes grew complicated, unsettled, as though she no longer knew how to act. I glanced at my watch. More than 30 minutes wasted here. My voice was polite as I asked. Anything else? Sabrina managed a strained smile. Thank you, Madeline. Ethan's face darkened instantly. He grabbed my arm, dragging me into the hallway. His voice was taut with suspicion. You're not angry, really? I almost laughed. He was impossible to understand. If I raged, he accused me of being petty and jealous. If I smiled and forgave, he grew uneasy as though my composure threatened him more than my fury. What did he want me to be? A saint, a goddess, a martyr who bent to his script? I was none of those. I tilted my head, smirking faintly. I'm not angry. His gaze probed mine, sharp and searching, then slowly softened as though he had solved a riddle. His hand rose, brushing my nose with a boyish gesture. You're pretending to be generous, aren't you? Just like before. When I was with Sabrina, you always pretended not to care. But then you'd cry alone. He leaned closer, his voice lowering into assurance. Don't worry, it won't be long. Soon everything will be like it used to be. I understood perfectly. He was telling me to wait for Sabrina to die. That when she was gone, he would return to me as though nothing had happened. That my role was to step aside, to endure humiliation, to smile, while my heart was carved open. I was supposed to accept this arrangement like it was the natural order. For the real owner of this body, the girl who had given him her youth and devotion, those words would have been a blade too cruel to survive. He reached for my hand, his eyes soft again. Things have been so busy lately. I've left the company to you. I'm sorry. I pulled my hand back slowly, my voice even. It's fine. It wasn't a lie. He had spent nearly every waking hour at Sabrina's side, leaving the business to me. Fortunately, the true Madeline had built Sullivan Enterprises from nothing. With him, she had known its every corner, its every weakness. I stepped into her place seamlessly. Day by day, I grew accustomed to running things, even began to enjoy the power of being in control. It was almost intoxicating, but the calm never lasted. That afternoon, after a long morning buried in reports, my phone rang. Ethan's name flashed across the screen. I thought he might finally be checking on me, maybe even remembering who I was to him. Instead, when I answered, his tone was casual, almost entitled. Maddie, Sabrina wants the porridge you used to make. I stiffened. What porridge? He chuckled, oblivious. The porridge you cooked for me 4 years ago. Don't you remember I dug into the inherited memories of this body? Yes, there had been such a time. 4 years ago, his parents had died, one after the other. Fresh out of college, Ethan had been thrown into a collapsing company. The sharks circled, the vultures laughed. In desperation, he sought an investor only to be humiliated. A man who owed his father once placed a banquet table of liquor before him, smirking. Drink until I'm satisfied and maybe I'll invest. Ethan, young and untested, obeyed. Glass after glass until his face turned ghostly pale. And when it was over, the man sneered, pointing at him with cruel delight. Look at you now, the Sullivan heir, groveling like a stray dog. He tossed a wad of bills onto the table. Your father once lent me 10 grand when I was nothing. Here's 100,000 back with a little interest. Consider the debt paid. Ethan stumbled out of that room, broken his pride, shredded his body, poisoned with alcohol. He collapsed outside, coughing blood into the night. The girl who owned this body had been waiting for him, trembling with fear, but refusing to abandon him. She had taken him to the hospital, tended him, cooked every day. To keep him eating, she had prepared 18 variations of porridge, pouring her love into each bowl. It was then, in his most fragile state, that he had clung to her, whispered promises that should have been sacred. You'll only cook for me, Maddie, only me. And now, years later, he was asking me to cook the same dish for Sabrina. The man had tossed the stack of cash onto the table with mocking generosity. Your father once lent me 10 grand when I was nothing. Here's 100,000 in return. Consider my debt paid. He clapped Ethan on the shoulder like a joke and left. Only then did Ethan realize the cruelty of it, the humiliation that had been laid bare. He bent down, gathered the bills with trembling hands, and stumbled out of the private room, his pride shattered. She had been waiting outside. The true Madeline, the one who had lived through every moment of his downfall, saw his pale face, and her eyes welled instantly. But before she could speak, Ethan doubled over and vomited a mouthful of dark blood at her feet, collapsing into her arms. At the hospital, they said it was stomach hemorrhage from drinking too much. His body pushed beyond its limit. 2 weeks in bed, his spirit utterly broken. She had been terrified he would stop eating altogether, so she cooked every day, changing the menu constantly. 18 kinds of porridge, just to keep him from rejecting a single spoonful. It was during those fragile days that he leaned against her shoulder, unguarded, almost childish. "From now on, you'll only cook porridge for me. Only me." She had laughed softly. "Okay." He looked at her then with raw vulnerability. "Why are you so good to me?" She had taken a long time to answer, finally choosing the safest reply. "Because you're my best friend." But he hadn't been satisfied. His voice dropped low, coaxing, pained. "Just a friend." She fell silent, then whispered, "Yes." Because she remembered what he had once said to Sabrina. The sentence that had seared itself into her bones. "Madeline is just a friend. Once bitten, twice shy. Better to pretend, better to keep her heart locked away than to be hurt again." The progress bar of her mission had climbed to 80%, but her heart had sunk into emptiness. She had loved him fiercely, but dared not show it. Now, as his puppet, my emotions were duller, quieter, but not non-existent. I rubbed my eyes and asked evenly, "Do you know what I was doing just now?" He stayed silent, confused. A smile touched my lips, sharp as glass. "From 9 to noon, I was working non-stop, learning strategies, running your company, and I haven't eaten a single bite. And now you expect me to drop everything and cook porridge for your ex-girlfriend, Sabrina?" Interjected sweetly, her voice soft and self-effacing. "If it bothers you, Madeline, then forget it. Don't argue because of me. I've already caused you both too much trouble." In one breath, she painted herself as considerate while making me the villain. Ethan immediately took her side. "She's a patient, Maddie. She can't go hungry. And the company doesn't need you every second. It will survive without you." He didn't even give me a chance to respond, simply hung up. I narrowed my eyes at the dark screen. Was the system mistaken? Was Ethan truly the male lead or just a fool wearing the wrong crown? On the drive home, I told the housekeeper to prepare a pot of porridge and several good dishes packaged neatly. Then I headed straight to St. Mary's Hospital. When Sabrina saw me enter, a flicker of triumph lit her eyes before she smoothed it into modest gratitude. "I'm sorry to trouble you, Madeline." I handed her the food. Ethan, ever attentive, took it quickly, spooning out a bowl, blowing on it carefully, as if she were made of glass. He almost lifted it to her lips, but perhaps my presence stopped him. He turned to me instead. "Maddie, shouldn't you go home and rest?" I smiled unbothered. "I haven't had lunch yet." His brows furrowed. "Then go eat." But I was a puppet bound by my own rules. Mealtime could not be skipped. The VIP room was stocked with every convenience, so I unpacked my bag, laying out 3 steaming dishes and a fragrant soup, and sat down comfortably to eat. The two of them stared at me as though I had broken some invisible law. Ethan's voice edged with irritation. "What are you doing?" I lifted my chopsticks slowly. "Eating. Don't mind me." Still they watched me. I sighed, set down my utensils, and offered politely, "If she has trouble eating, I can help." The air froze solid. Their eyes widened in disbelief, as if I had uttered the unthinkable. I touched my lips. There's nothing on my face. Finally, perhaps fearing I truly would carry through. Ethan urged Sabrina to eat on her own. Even when she made a show of lifting the hot bowl and crying out softly, too hot, he didn't move. His gaze never left me, as though I had become the stranger in the room, not her. Even when Sabrina lifted the bowl with exaggerated delicacy, crying out softly that it was too hot, Ethan did not flinch. His eyes stayed fixed on me, steady and unreadable. After the meal, my phone buzzed with a call from my secretary. I stood ready to leave, but Ethan followed me out into the hall. Just as I turned to say goodbye, he caught my wrist. His voice was low. "I know you didn't cook that porridge." I let out a quiet laugh. "Sorry, I didn't have time." "You're not angry?" he asked, almost tentative. "Why would I be?" I tilted my head, amused. "You two are just old friends. And she's dying." "I understand." He shook his head, puzzled, then confessed with a strange honesty. The truth is, I ordered takeout too. For a moment, I froze baffled. Then why call me here? My smile sharpened. You really are insane. His answer was simple, almost childlike. I thought you'd be angry. I laughed again, this time colder. Why should I be? She's a friend, she's about to die. What's left for me to be jealous of? But his eyes never wavered from my face, as though searching for the tears he expected for the cracks that used to betray me. Finally, he whispered, Madeline, you've changed. Of course, I replied smoothly. People change. I just understand you better now. He frowned, lips pressed tight. Then why don't I feel happy? I laughed, light and distant. Don't joke with me, Ethan. Take care of Sabrina. She's pitiful, isn't she? You're such good friends. The comments flashed across my vision in a frenzy. Who is this girl? Where's the real heroine? According to the original script, they should have had a massive fight here. He should break with Sabrina, return to Madeline, and leave the first love to die alone in her hospital bed. Why is she so calm? Has the heroine been replaced? On the 5th day of Sabrina's stay at St. Mary's, Ethan told me he would take her abroad. Her illness was rare advanced, and the doctor said she might only have weeks left. A clinic overseas had just announced a breakthrough trial, offering a glimmer of hope. Sabrina seized on it as if it were her last lifeline, and Ethan, of course, would accompany her. I had known for days he was planning it. His request for my opinion was only formality. Whether I agreed or not, he was going. Just as before, when the real Madeline could not stop his sham of a wedding, I could not stop this either. But the truth was, I had no intention of trying. I smiled lightly, then go. Sabrina looked at me with tear-bright eyes. Madeline, I promise I'll give him back to you, whole and untouched. I scratched my temple, my tone offhand. Sure, whatever you say. Ethan said nothing. He only looked at me for a long time, his gaze heavy with something I didn't bother to decipher. Perhaps it was my calm that unsettled him most. When they left, there were no calls, no messages, nothing from him. It was strange. In the past, whenever he traveled, even for a week, he would call me morning and night. If a single call was missed, he would find a way to reach me. But now, silence. Instead, Sabrina messaged me. From the moment their plane landed, her words poured into my phone like a flood. Ethan is sleeping in the family cot, but he says he can't rest unless he sees you every day. I told him not to be childish. Ha ha. I typed back a short reply. Ha ha. Another message. The medicine here is so expensive. Ethan went through every Asian grocery store in town just to find the candy you like. Am I being too spoiled? I responded simply. Probably. She added a photo, Ethan's back turned, bent slightly. As he spoke with a nurse, his broad shoulders softened by fatigue. Her caption dripped with sentiment. Thank you for standing by him all these years, Madeline. You made him the man he is today. I tilted my head, analyzing the image like a critic inspecting art. The composition was poor. The angle made him look shorter. That was all. And then I replied with nothing at all. The photo Sabrina sent was poorly framed, making Ethan look shorter than he was. And I almost smirked at the thought that my lack of reaction might have angered her. Within minutes, her text poured in like an avalanche. Ethan told me he has never treated anyone as well as he treats me. Is that true, Madeline? You're so pitiful. 10 years with him and you still have nothing. I pressed my lips together, unimpressed. That was a lie. I had shares in the company, hard-earned and undeniable. Ethan might fool her with grand gestures, but I knew better. I knew the truth of what had bound us together, the sweet and bitter years that Sabrina had no part in. 3 years ago, when Ethan had cracked down too ruthlessly on the board, he had made enemies. One night, they waited for him in the underground parking lot, ready to teach him a lesson. We had worked late together at Sullivan Enterprises, and I had slid into the car first, watching him approach, when a blow to the back of his head dropped him cold. They dragged him into a van. They told me not to call the cops, their voices sharp with menace. I was terrified, trembling so hard I could barely stand. But my mind held only one thought: Ethan cannot die. I dialed 911 anyway. Then grabbed the canister of pepper spray from my bag and ran at them screaming, flailing, desperate. My cries drew security guards. The police arrived minutes later and the kidnappers were caught. Ethan was unharmed, but I had collapsed from blood loss injuries I hadn't even noticed in the chaos. For days I lay unconscious, and for days he stayed at my side. He wiped me down, spoke to me as if my soul lingered just outside the room, begged me to open my eyes. When I didn't, he clutched at superstitions, something he'd always mocked before. He heard of a legend, 999 stone steps up a mountain trail, a prayer at the summit, and a wish would be granted. So he went. A boy born to privilege who had never walked a mile without comfort, dragged his body up each stone step. His knees split his forehead, bloodied his palms torn. But he never stopped. He didn't pray for wealth, didn't ask for success, only for me to live. At the summit, he accepted a small talisman from a monk and placed it by my pillow. The next morning, my eyes fluttered open. The system muttered in annoyance at the monk's commentary. Why mention where the blessing came from? Just bless and be done with it. I told the system to silence itself. I hadn't heard the monk's words. All I knew was the charm in my hand, the foolish smile on my lips, and Ethan's eyes locked on mine, luminous with relief. The system sighed, another one drowning in love. And the one who loves deepest is always the one who loses the most. Now Sabrina texted again. Tomorrow is my last surgery. The odds are slim. My final wish is to finish what was left undone at the wedding, to become Ethan's lawful wife. Do you think he'll say yes? I didn't know, but the comments scrolling across my vision answered cruelly for me. This isn't just betrayal of the heart. This is betrayal of the body, too. If the so-called male lead ends up with the heroine after this, it would be absurd. I felt the bitterness harden in my chest. Let them suffer forever, I thought. An hour later, Ethan messaged me from half a world away. Maddie, wait for me. Let's get married when I come back. It wasn't hard to imagine the scene, Sabrina in the hospital bed beside him, his conscience pricked just enough after indulging himself. Guilt is heavy, but promises are cheap. For the real Madeline marriage had once been her dearest dream. She had spoken often of it, described the lavender fields, she wanted the sunlight, the vows, the dress. He had pretended to listen, eyes closed, drifting to sleep. Now, years later, he had taken those dreams and handed them to another. And after giving them away, he offered me marriage like a consolation prize. She had spoken so much about her dream. Wedding whispered details into the quiet of the night when her heart was still soft and hopeful. But when she turned to look, Ethan had already fallen asleep beside her. That night, she exhaled in relief and disappointment all at once. The mission to conquer him was almost complete, but she had not yet chosen whether she would stay or leave. At the time, she thought he hadn't been listening. Now it seemed almost laughable. Not only had he remembered every word, but he had stolen that dream and given it away without shame. Unfortunately for him, I was not the Madeline who begged for promises. I was the one the system called White Chrysanthemum, the substitute who refused to accept or reject, who carried no illusions about marriage. Who would agree to bind their life to a man like him? My reply to his proposal was short, almost mocking. Ha ha. Minutes later, my phone lit up with his name. He didn't even greet me. What does ha-ha mean? I shrugged, though he couldn't see it. We'll see. We'll see what are you trying to say? I'm busy, I told him, and ended the call. His voice had dropped low, dark with unease as he asked, Do you not want to marry me anymore? But I had laughed again and given him nothing. The next evening, just before midnight, my time and mid-morning where he was, Sabrina posted on social media. In the picture, she lay in a hospital bed, her patient's gown stark against her pale skin, but her right hand was lifted in a victory sign. Another hand clasped hers tightly. The two of them locked together. Both wore matching rings. Her caption read, I hope we still have tomorrow. She admitted the surgery carried enormous risk, the first of its kind on a human subject. But even as she prepared for it, she had the calmness to declare her hope, to flaunt the intimacy, of matching bands. Perhaps during these weeks, Ethan's constant presence had made her believe she was truly loved. I pressed like on the post, my expression flat. Good for you. Minutes later, Ethan messaged me. She's about to be wheeled in. I need to keep her calm. I replied, understood. Could you not speak to me in that tone? Then I sent another message. I get it. He answered with a question mark confusion hanging in the silence until my phone rang again. I booked a flight, he said breathlessly. 2 hours from now. Maddie, I'm coming back. I blinked. You're leaving before the surgery is finished. I promised you, he said. I would see her through the final stretch and then return. No matter the outcome, she won't matter after this. Only you. For the first time, I realized how terrifying he was in his coldness. I had once thought he loved Sabrina desperately. Now I understood he did not truly love anyone. That was why he could so easily wound the real Madeline, why he could watch Sabrina's life slip away without his heart breaking. To him, she was not a woman, but a redemption story, an old wound dressed in need, and he was playing the savior. It was the oldest hero narrative in the world, and the most absurd. Her surgery dragged on for hours. By the time Ethan's plane touched down, the result had been decided. Failure. At 26 years old, Sabrina Cruz's life ended on the operating table. When Ethan called to tell me, his tone was casual, almost indifferent. It's unfortunate. 3 words to summarize 6 months of agony, of blood and fear and hope. Then his voice softened as if he hadn't just erased her struggle. I'm on my way back to you. I've missed you. But I wasn't waiting for him. What I received instead was news that left even me stunned. Ethan had crashed his car into a semi-truck. His legs had been crushed. He might never walk again. Lucas Miller rushed into the office with panic in his eyes. Miss Parker, he gasped. Mr. Sullivan was in a terrible accident. I set down my pen calmly and looked up at him. I see. You see? His face twisted in disbelief. I opened my planner and spoke in the even tone of a woman who had long since stopped being surprised. This afternoon, I have a meeting with a client and a board presentation right after. Tomorrow, I leave for a week-long trip. I'll find time to visit him when I return. You're serious? Lucas's voice cracked. His legs, they might never heal, and you just don't care. I raised an eyebrow, a hint of irony curving my lips. He isn't dead, is he? His mouth opened, but no words came. I patted his shoulder lightly, as one would a frightened intern. You're young, Lucas. Don't dramatize everything. He'll survive. Inside me, there was no chaos, no devastation, just a hollow certainty. Ethan Sullivan had fallen not to death, but to something worse for a man like him, permanent weakness. Lucas was stunned, staring at me as if I had spoken something inhuman. Mr. Sullivan is in a terrible accident, and you can just stay this calm. Do you even have a heart anymore? I arched a brow. He isn't dead. When he had no reply, I patted his shoulder gently, my tone almost maternal. You're young, Lucas. Don't let emotion cloud everything. Life doesn't end just because someone stumbles. But when Ethan finally opened his eyes in St. Mary's, the miracle had not come. His legs were lifeless beneath the sheets, his once proud body now trapped. The woman he wanted most, Madeline, was not at his side. Only a few loyal friends sat vigil, their faces heavy with pity. He scanned the room, voice hoarse. Where's Maddie? Lucas hesitated, then held out a small talisman. She's away on business. She asked me to give you this. Ethan's hand trembled as he took it instantly. Recognizing the charm he had once carried up 1,000 steps under the Arizona sun, knees bloodied, begging for her life years ago, he didn't believe it. She couldn't truly abandon him. Hadn't she once wept if he so much as overdrank, scolding him through tears? If you keep this up, I'll walk away, Ethan. Don't make me remind you again. Now she wasn't here at all. That night he dreamed of light, a white blaze pulling him forward. Curiosity pushed him across the boundary, and suddenly he was standing inside a cramped apartment. A thin young man stood over an ironing board, smoothing a woman's blouse, while balancing a phone at his ear. "Yes, Mom, I'll visit tonight. And yes, I like her. She's kind, she's good. I even asked if she'd come with me." Ethan didn't know who the boy was, but unease tightened around his chest. Then the door opened and she walked in. Madeline. His Madeline. Except she wasn't the same. Her hair, once cropped short for convenience, now fell in soft waves down to her waist. She smiled warmly at the boy, eyes shining with tenderness Ethan had once thought belonged only to him. "How's your mother, Tyler?" she asked, voice gentle. The young man lowered his head, sadness shadowing his face. "Still the same, not getting better." Madeline reached out, took his hand, and rubbed his palm softly. "She'll be all right. You'll both be all right." He leaned into her shoulder, fragile and comforted. She didn't pull away. She even patted his back, steady, soothing. Ethan's world ignited in rage. It didn't matter if her hair was long or short, if her smile was bright or weary. She belonged to him, and only him. He lunged forward, trying to rip them apart. Madeline let him go. "That bastard is tricking you," he roared. But his hands passed straight through them like smoke. He was a ghost, powerless, screaming into a void no one could hear. She only picked up the freshly pressed blouse, lifted it to her face, and inhaled the scent of clean fabric, smiling softly. "Such a handsome young man," she murmured. He froze. 3 months earlier, she must have met him. Maybe at some private club, maybe by chance. Ethan could see it in the way she looked at him. Compassion, affection, even admiration. It was unbearable. The boy in my vision turned out to be nothing more than a student, still young, still tender. His father had died early, leaving his mother to raise him alone. Fate, cruel as ever, had struck again, a breast cancer diagnosis treatment that demanded money he didn't have. So he stumbled into this path, doing whatever he could to survive. Men weren't the only ones with a savior complex. Women had it too. A wealthy woman, one who woke each morning to tens of thousands without lifting a hand, could easily fall into the illusion of rescuing someone else's tragedy. It felt like an old story from a century ago, retold in modern skin. The system, which only hours earlier had been eager to watch more chaos, sighed now. "There's nothing left worth seeing here." And I too let go of the thought. Ethan Sullivan woke seething from his dream, only to find Madeline sitting calmly across from him, legs crossed, laptop balanced on her knees, typing through reports. For a moment he was disoriented. The Madeline in his dream had worn her hair, long flowing in waves, softening her face. This Madeline was sleek, efficient, her bob-framing eyes too sharp to look through. Long hair or short, which was the real her. Ever since that wedding with Sabrina, she had changed, and he never dared think too deeply about it. In his heart, he repeated the same mantra. "She still loves me. She's just angry. Once Sabrina is gone, she'll come back to me." Desperate to prove it, he tried to provoke her. He wanted the old fights, the tears, the familiar chaos. But she stayed too calm, calm enough to terrify him, as though he no longer mattered. He shoved the thought down, forcing a smile. "Maddie, why did it take you so long to visit me?" She brushed her hair back, her tone even. "I've been busy. I just acquired some minor shares. With what I already own, you may as well call me CEO Parker now." The chill in her voice sent a jolt through him, his stomach twisted, panic rushing up his throat. Are you really Madeline?" She looked at him as if he had made a joke. A smile touched her lips, her eyes glinting. "What do you think?" White Chrysanthemum closed her laptop, rose from the chair, and walked toward the door. She was only playing her part. Ethan was crippled, his company leaderless, but she had already managed it this long. What was another lifetime in power? For Ethan, though, the business meant nothing now. He pushed himself out of bed only to collapse onto the cold floor, his useless legs dragging beneath him. Pain lanced through him, but he ignored it, clutching to a single thought. "You're not Madeline, are you?" His voice broke. She paused in the doorway, then turned her head just enough for him to see her shake it twice, deliberate and final. Every ounce of strength drained from him. He crumpled onto the tiles, the beeping of the monitor blaring in his ears like the tolling of a bell. He remembered the monk's words from years ago, the day he had begged for her life. The one you love will return from afar, but she will return only to leave again. At the time, he had laughed, dismissed it as mystic nonsense, but still he had carried the talisman home. And she had returned. She had opened her eyes. But now she was gone, truly gone, leaving him to a world where she no longer needed him. The light overhead hummed dully. His hands reached for the charm on the nightstand, clutched it weakly. But no miracle would come this time. Madeline Parker had walked away, and Ethan Sullivan finally understood he had lost her forever. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next videos.